The Stanley Parable is one of the most interesting gaming experiences of all time. With its uniquely and hilariously delivered meta-narrative on gaming and the choices we make therein, it seems to stand alone in its own class, and there is absolutely no other game quite like it. Or is there? I was wondering if there is anything else that can scratch that same itch for entertaining, subversive, fourth wall-breaking, explorative gaming, so I've been taking a look at some games that potentially offer a similar experience. If you haven't played the Stanley Parable, then why are you even watching this video? Why would you even care if there are other games like the Stanley Parable if you don't even know what the game is like? You should play it. Okay, well, if you are an odd kind of person who watches something about a game they should definitely experience themselves, just stop watching this and just go and play the game. Or, no, wait, actually stay with me, maybe you'd benefit from this. This is the Stanley Parable demo, and I wanted to talk about this because I'd bet that even a lot of the smart, sophisticated and beautiful people who have enjoyed the full game might not have played it, and might actually want to play it just as much as the poor, unfortunate plebs who have not played the game. This demo, rather than going the traditional method of featuring a small section of the full game, has its very own unique standalone short story. As someone whose life has been forever enriched by the Stanley Parable's glorious adventure, I only played this demo very recently and I still very much enjoyed it as a fresh chapter with plenty of great content. If you are a lost and hopeless soul who has not played the Stanley Parable, this demo might be just right to help you understand the genius of the game. If, you know, the last 12 years of acclaim by the gaming community and critics wasn't enough for you. So as you really should know, the developers of the Stanley Parable are, of course, literal gods amongst men for their work making one of the greatest games of all time. But did you know they made some other games? Davey Wreden followed up with The Beginner's Guide. This game allows you to take a look at a collection of games which were made by Davey Wreden's friend, who he calls Coda. Davey Wreden himself narrates the experience as one by one you play through the games in the order that Coda sent them to Davey.
And it kind of makes you wonder, what was going through his head as he was building this? I want us to see past the games themselves. I want to get to know who this human being really is. And that's exactly what we're going to do here.
He analyses the games as you play them, casting his critical game developer eye over the short and bizarre games, and enhances your playability by modifying them at certain points. He even finds time to helpfully psychologically evaluate his friend based on the content and themes of Coda's creations. As you, the player, and Davey as the narrator undertake this journey to find out more about these games and their creator, it soon becomes clear that not all is as it once seemed. This is an exceptionally great game in its own respects, and definitely also deserves to be played by anyone who enjoyed the Stanley Parable, as it has a very similar meta-narrative, although somewhat darker than humorous. More than anything, this game gives you a unique insight into the thoughts and feelings of a game developer. However, you might not feel overly comfortable about it. On a much lighter note, the Stanley Parable's developer, no, not him, the other one, William Pugh, also made a follow-up game that takes almost as long to say as it does to play. Dr. Langeskov, the Tiger and the Terribly Cursed Emerald, A Whirlwind Heist, is a comedic adventure where you prepare to play an exciting espionage game fraught with danger. The game is narrated by the former host of British TV quiz Nevermind the Buzzcocks, no, not him, the other one, Simon Amstell, who does an excellent, hilarious voice role as the stage manager. You start at the game's backstage area, presented as an elaborate theatre production ready to play. However, there's a bit of a problem.
Hi. So this is a bit awkward. The thing is, the game you've just downloaded, somebody is playing it right now, so you can't play it. I'm really sorry.
So before you can play the game, you're assigned to help the short-handed stage crew to manage the other player's game by helping out with lighting, animal management, weather effects and pyrotechnics, amongst other things. The stage manager's directions and tasks get increasingly manic and bizarre, and a hilarious slapstick comedy ensues. This calamitous backstage caper is another fantastic and funny meta-narrative game which Stanley fans will love. And don't worry, it's not long until you go on through for your turn to play the actual game, sure to satisfy the most ferocious appetite. Okay, so maybe it was fairly obvious that the people who made the Stanley Parable also made other games like the Stanley Parable, but there are also games like the Stanley Parable which were made by people who didn't make the Stanley Parable. For example, this is Moral Dilemma: The Interview, a game where you're taking an important job interview in a totally normal office.
Welcome to The Interview, capital T, capital I. I was really impressed with how you did in the screening test, so I have high expectations for you. There's been around 25,000 candidates before you, so there is one position available. No pressure, of course, but There's a lot riding on this.
Your interviewer is your narrator through the experience, who sets you up with a series of silly challenges to try and prove your worth to the company. The offices and their corridors are full of unusual and funny surprises, with talking inanimate objects, helpful signage and notes, and useful machinery, amongst other things. And while there's a somewhat linear path to reach the ending, there is a few alternate path choices to get some funny results. In true Stanley style, it restarts when you reach the ending, but then some more rooms open up, which offer a prologue and some minigames and other Easter eggs. Although it's very knowingly inspired by and therefore somewhat derivative of the Stanley Parable, it's also a very enjoyable, albeit short, experience. Nicely, the base game is free on Steam with some additional content as a DLC for a low price, which makes it a very accessible experience. Now this is The Corridor, a game with a corridor with a button at the end, and the developer is a narrator who wants you to have nothing to do with it.
Never open this game again. How dare you?
He kicks you out of the game to your desktop and changes things up and says different things each time you reopen it.
Damn it. Oh, so you like pushing a load of meaningless old buttons, do you? Well, feast on this.
He repeatedly questions your choice to continue playing despite him making the game increasingly more annoying, and then later on he gradually becomes introspective himself about the experience. The game does very well at taking a simple basic concept and telling quite an entertaining story from its presentation. It's a very short but well-crafted, fourth-wall breaking meta-narrative game which I found a very interesting and funny experience. Now this is Do Not Buy This Game, a game with a corridor with a button at the end and the developer is a narrator who wants you to have nothing to do with it.
Oh, no. Do not go towards that button, please. No, what are you doing? Stay away.
Similar to The Corridor, but slightly different, the narrator tries his best to dissuade you from reaching the now enormous button by giving you a few humorous button-themed distractions on your way.
Every time you press this button, you will gain $1 directly to your bank account. And it appears that the money you get is coming right out of my bank account.
This game demo ends on a somewhat sympathetic note for its creator, as he doubts himself and his ability to make an enjoyable game, and it's all the more poignant now considering this game demo was released 6 years ago with no full game available. It's apparently still in development, and I hope it gets a full release, as this seems like a creator with a lot of promise for being able to deliver a fun meta-narrative game.
Last chance not to press it.
This is Do Not Press the Button or You'll Delete the Multiverse, a game where, yeah, you probably get the gist. However, this game greatly expands on its titular concept and becomes a rather more full and interesting game with entertaining sections and puzzles. The narrator is presented as an AI game developer, and you form an interesting and progressive relationship as it shows you around all of its game world.
I am the creator of this world, and here you have the complete freedom to do anything you like. The only problem is when writing the code, I forgot to remove the big red button that deletes the multiverse. Please stay away from that button.
It's all quite silly and light-hearted, and while it's nowhere near as smart or funny as the Stanley Parable, which is a very high bar to be fair, it does have a knowing, self-aware of this fact charm. There is a section where you're being shown different universes when you enter the "What if this game was made with actual talent" universe, where it plays out a direct homage to its inspiration. All in all, this is an enjoyable adventure, and its understanding of itself as a nonsensical fourth-wall breaking game makes it almost a meta-parody of games inspired by the Stanley Parable, if that makes sense. Now, in an ironically named title for a list of similar games, this is The Unique Adventure. It lives up to this irony in its gameplay when it gives you some illusion of choice, but never being consequential enough to really make a difference. The game starts with an amusing story about your character drunkenly waking up in an unknown place, and the narrator guiding you through an increasingly bizarre set of challenges in the apartment building. The way it references the player's choices and situations makes it a very similar experience to the Stanley Parable. However, with its clearly padded for length sections dividing its albeit quite amusing moments, this game demo doesn't feel to me to have enough promise to inspire any confidence of this developer making a full-length game of this premise. And given its age of 8 years and still with no updates, it's not looking like ever happening anyway. But still, this is a quite entertaining, short, but not very unique adventure. The final and probably best example I have found, Title Pending, is a game which has you playing the role of a playtester for a video game in development. The game's lead developer is in the role of the narrator who guides you through the experience of playtesting the game. As you play, you find some issues. There are some bugs and areas of the game which you can access which come as a surprise to its developer, and you work together to work through the problems within the game. The game glitches out and resets several times, leading to a lot of confusion between yourself and the developer narrator, and a surreal story unfolds as you try to repair and safely escape from the game. There's a lot more to the game's narrative which I won't mention that makes it a tense and gripping story, the pace of which runs down its playtime very nicely. It is a very enjoyable, interesting and sometimes quite funny adventure. And while it does seem to take a lot of inspiration from the Stanley Parable and its developers' associated games, it still crafts a smart, distinct and thoroughly entertaining experience. A perfect example of a narrator-driven, meta-narrative, fourth-wall-breaking, explorative, walking sim adventure. It's a bit of a wordy description, isn't it? Maybe with enough of these kind of games being produced, we can come up with a name to define this genre without me having to give my keyboard a workout. Maybe Stanlike would be appropriate to honour the game which started it all. Maybe, although it feels unlikely, someday there could be a Stanlike game to surpass the source of its inspiration. But for now, for capturing the brilliance of this kind of gameplay, the end is still not the end for the genius benchmark of standards set by the Stanley Parable.
When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left.